Now available on Blu-ray from Arrow Home Video is 1970's The Dunwich Horror, or if you're from the UK, The Dunwich Horror, directed by Daniel Haller and starring Sandra Dee, Dean Stockwell, Ed Begley, Senior not Junior, and Sam Jaffe. And this was a fun one. This was a fun one. This is one I had seen on video and on DVD. I had the DVD, and I was never really into it for some reason until this viewing on this Arrow Blu-ray. It's an written old American International Pictures film based on the H.P. Lovecraft story, and it's just weird. It's weird and groovy and psychedelic and perverse and has a great Les Baxter soundtrack, and I had a really good time with this. So, basic story, we have Ed Begley Sr. as a college professor who's he's pontificating to a class on this book, the Necronomicon, that he possesses. And after the lecture is over, he gives it to his assistant Sandra Dee to lock back up in the glass case in the library. And Dean Stockwell is there as this groovy afroed mustachioed guy going, "Could I see that? Could I just take a? I mean, I came a long way. Could I take a look at that? But could I just maybe?" And thus begins this descent into darkness with Sandra Dee and Dean Stockwell. She feels bad for him. She lets him look at the book. "Oh, it's so late. I missed my last train. Oh, can you give me a ride back home? Where do you live?" "Oh, I live in Dunwich. It's not that far away." "Oh, stay forever." Doesn't really go that way, but it gets worse and worse for her. So she finds out, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. She finds out that he is not quite what he seems. The town has some dark secrets, and that book is key to making something very, very bad happen, involving the old ones and weird creatures and other dimensions and black magic and on and on and on. So it's a weird, wacky late 60s, early 70s AIP horror film. I love American International movies. I've said this many times, but it was always amusing to me that when I was a kid, my father, out of the blue, we were watching something, talking about movies, and he said, "Boy, you know, back when I was a kid, the worst was American International. If you saw that name come up on screen, you knew it was going to be terrible." And then a year or two later, I had seen a lot of these movies on Saturday afternoon TV. He was probably talking about the black and white 50s cheaper stuff. Not that AIP ever had grand budgets to work with, but I feasted on the 60s and 70s American International stuff on Saturday afternoon Boston TV in the early 80s. And for me, it was the total opposite from what he said. If I saw the AIP logo, I get excited. I'm like, "Ooh, you know, this is going to be good." And this is a lot of fun. It's great. It's eerie. It's perverse. The effects are very effective. It's something I was writing in my notes, which was later repeated in some of the supplements. The effects that were very much of their time, these psychedelic solarization, weird effects that should be dated, actually now feel very, very fresh because they're unlike the kind of effects we see now, and they're highly effective. And this transfer is so good looking that the colors just like attack your eyes. They're so vibrant in these weird sequences, and they're weird, and they don't really show you a lot. And if you really freeze frame and dig into what you're seeing on screen, it is pretty cheap. But in the moment, if you let it flow, if you're not stopping and rewinding and fast forwarding and zooming and all that stuff like theater goers originally did in 1970, it's really, really effective and fun. It could be seen as campy at times. I took it seriously because I take movies in their era and where they're coming from on their own terms 99% of the time. So I really had a great time. Cool to see Dean Stockwell. Cool to see Sandra Dee in what at the time was like image-shattering or image-defying performance. She was always known as, Gidget and the squeaky clean girl and the, girl next door. And in this, she enters into a darker realm, a seamier realm, so to speak. Ed Begley is quite good in it too. He played a lot of gruff guys in AIP movies, or at least in this and in Wild in the Streets. So now I will delve into the extras, which are voluminous. And they're all good. They're all really, really good. So I'm going to kind of glance over at my notes here. Someday I'll get a teleprompter and I'll just be looking right at you while I read my notes, and you'll just thrill or be even more reviled by it. So you get commentary by Guy Adams and A.K. Benedict. They're the writers of the Lovecraftian Audible They're the writers of the Lovecraftian Audible.com drama series Arkham County. It's kind of jokey. So I'm not a fan of the jokey commentaries that sort of mock the film a little bit, but it's a little light and jokey, and they keep the tone light, but it is a pretty good commentary. It's more, rather than being a really scholarly commentary, some commentaries are very scholarly where it's like, I got the knowledge and I'm going to lay it on you. And some commentaries are people kind of watching the movies and reacting to it. This kind of falls more into that second category, but they are charming and entertaining, so it's got that going for it. We have a conversation, this was my favorite, featuring my close personal friend, legendary comic artist S.R. Bissett, in a conversation with British writer Stephen Laws. This is like a 2-hour plus conversation. This also has on the Arrow discs, you select, and I like this, you go to special features, and you select a feature, and then it'll pop up with a little description of what you're going to see, and then a play button. This was a comedically long description for this. This is the description that maybe might have been better served as text at the beginning of this feature rather than on your menu screen. But it pops up, and it's like the whole menu screen explaining how this conversation came to be. It's really, really, really good. Not just because I know the guy, but Steve Bissett is great when he does any supplement on DVD or Blu-ray. He does his research, but he also lived through the era that these things came from, for the most part, and what he's talking about. So he has firsthand memories of seeing famous monsters photos and articles, and seeing movie posters and seeing trailers, and going to see these movies at drive-ins and indoor theaters, and what the audience reaction was and how they were advertised. So it's great. So it's a conversation between these two guys about the Dunwich Horror. They kind of go through the whole movie and talk about it beat by beat. They also talk about Lovecraft stuff and other movies of the era and AIP stuff and what it was like being a fan of this stuff and how they first got into it and how hard it was to see some of these movies. It's wonderful, and it's just a Zoom conversation between two guys. Wonderful. It's way longer than the movie they're talking about, but it's great. And I had a really, really good time essentially hanging out with these two guys for 2.5 hours. You get science fiction fantasy writer Ruth Emery's talking about Dunwich, Cthulhu, and the writings of Lovecraft. That's about 16 minutes. You get music historian David Huckvale talking about Les Baxter's score. This is really cool. This man is at a piano, and he basically discusses each piece of music in the film as it comes up and plays a little on the piano and talks about the musical themes and what the music is doing. It's like really intelligent analysis of the Les Baxter score for this movie, and that was really cool. And then you get the trailer, which is a lot of fun. The AIP trailers were always a lot of fun, and an image gallery of 34 images. So this is a really cool package. This is a really fun movie. This is always fun for me when I rewatch something that I wasn't a fan of in the first place, and for some reason it just clicks for me. I don't know if it was the transfer. I don't know if it was the mood I was in. I don't know if it was because it was an Arrow disc and I knew there were good supplements coming, but I really had a great time with the Dunwich Horror, and this is one that I look forward to showing other people, and hopefully is one that I might be able to get a chance to see in the theater at some point coming soon. So available now on Blu-ray from Arrow Home Video is 1970's The Dunwich Horror.